Is justice really blind? Or do we live in a two-tiered justice system that judges its citizens based on their gender rather than the crime they have committed? What is the penalty for a teacher who has sex with a student? In America, most schools have eliminated their sexual education courses as being too obtrusive into the lives of students. These classes were meant to prepare students for the eventuality of having sex. But there was no eventuality for them having sex with their own teachers. Tonight, on Predator 101, we discuss a justice system based upon gender. We hire teachers to mold our children's minds and to keep the relationship with them above the belt and purely platonic. Most teachers can't find the time between creating a winning lesson plan and grading homework, but some find the time to have sex with their students. Case in point, Mrs. Courtney Rosnowski, a 32-year-old teacher from the Bay, Wisconsin area who found the time to have sex with her 16-year-old student. Judge Donald Zollmulder sentenced her to only 6 months for that crime. Our male teacher, Mr. Timothy D. Grimes, a 24-year-old teacher from the Green Bay, Wisconsin area who found the time to have sex with a 17-year-old student. At trial, Judge Michael T.J. sentenced him to serve 4 years in prison. In this issue of Predator 101, as always, we compare and contrast the difference in sentencing given for the same crime based upon gender. In this case, what a male teacher received in sentencing as compared to his female counterpart for doing the same or worse. As usual in these cases, I insist that we look at the cases that exist in the same state and city to compare and contrast. As with most of these cases, the teacher is usually twice the age of the student they were purported to have sex with. Up first, we have the female teacher, Miss Courtney Rosnowski. Ms. Rosnowski was a 32-year-old contracted teacher at Green Bay Southwest High School. The student she had sex with was a 16-year-old at the time. Judge Donald Zollmulder sentenced her to 6 months in jail for that crime. Up next, the male teacher, Mr. Timothy D. Grimes, age 24, was convicted of having sex with his female student at age 17 years. He was a teacher at Suring High School in Green Bay, a 53-minute ride away from the school that Miss Courtney Rosnowski taught. But that difference in mileage would cost Mr. Grimes 4 years in prison. But why the disparity in sentencing? Miss Courtney Rosnowski had sexual relations with a boy half her age, at least 3 times that we know of. She was facing 5 charges, 3 counts of sexual assault of a student by a school staff member, and 2 counts of exposing intimate parts to a child. Miss Courtney Rosnowski pleaded no contest to 1 count of exposing intimate parts to a child, under a plea deal that saw the most serious charge of sexual assault dropped. Would this be the same for the male teacher? She met her male victim while at Southwest High School. Rosnowski, who worked as a teacher's assistant at Green Bay Southwest High, was first charged in September 2019 after Child Protective Services sent the allegations to police. According to prosecutors, Rosnowski told police she met the teenage boy at Southwest last year and began taking him outside of school. The two reportedly met multiple times throughout the summer, and she admitted to having sexual intercourse with him twice. Now, the first time in July, Rosnowski said she was drunk and couldn't remember having sex. This is what she told police. Rosnowski admitted to the judge in a statement that she was having extensive personal issues in her life and had been drinking a lot at the time. Now, I asked you to notice here that typically the female defendant leans to her molesting of a child as being fault of something or someone else outside of herself. A percentage of male teachers do the same thing, but they are not listened to by the judge or given absolution by the court, as female teachers are. Nor are they given absolution in the court of public opinion. In court, Ms. Rosnowski appeared remorseful as she stood before Judge Donald Zoldmulder and acknowledged her wrongdoings. In these cases, the defendant's lawyer will always coach them to appear more remorseful, as it will help their case. Longer prison sentences are usually given to people who do not seem remorseful or are deemed a continuing danger to the community at large. Ms. Rosnowski said this as she pleaded with the judge for leniency in this case. She says, "I accept responsibility for what I did, and I know what I did was wrong. While I did not initiate the relationship, I should have put an end to it once I realized that the messages being sent to me were from a student at the school." She continued on by saying, "Please have it in your heart to see the good in me." Rosnowski said, noting that she had been attending counseling and stopped drinking. Now, according to Rosnowski, she had been drinking heavily and had extensive personal issues in her life at the time she entered into the illicit relationship, right, with the teen victim in the summer of 2019. Rosnowski admitted to investigators she had sex with the high school student, but had initially reached out to him intending to mentor the victim, she said. She also told investigators she was really drunk during an encounter and had vomited in the house with the victim. Now, the victim told investigators he had 2 sexual encounters with Rosnowski, who told him that he was special and deserved special things. So this is in line with coaching, just like males do, as their predators. Now, an employee at the school told investigators that school staff members had been talking about how Rosnowski was unusually close with the 16-year-old student she was often seen escorting through the halls. In this case, the student broke off the relationship. Now, in most all these cases, the judges usually run down the defendant and show them what a horrible person they are. But after that, they still issue 2 different verdicts and 2 different type sentences based upon gender. Now, all of the law has no gender provision in it. In fact, women around the world would be pissed off if they had to serve more time than a male for the same crime. But there are no marches in the streets worldwide to get equal sentencing when a male is being judged by gender negativity more than his female counterpart. Weird, right? But the most damning of all these sentences is when a male judge is harsher on a man than on a woman, and he is male. On the day of Ms. Rosnowski's sentencing, Judge Zoldmulder had this to say about her conduct. Remember? They beat him down first and then let him go. He said that Mrs. Rosnowski conducted was appalling and the nightmare of every parent. He continued on by saying what a parent assumes is that their child is in a safe environment with trusting people. "But I have to tell you, I am unimpressed by your comments about a good heart," he told her. "You drove over there," meaning to the plaintiff's house. "It doesn't have anything to do with heart," said the judge. The judge told Rosnowski how shameful her actions were and directed her to turn towards her own mother and father, who were sitting in the gallery at the time, and to look at them. He said, "Here's what I want to tell you. Miss Rosnowski, you've broken their hearts. And whatever punishment I impose on you, I assume that the humiliation and embarrassment you've caused your mother and father is more punishment that you will carry than what I could impose on you in this court." Now, this is at the point he beat her down, right? The judge also placed Rosnowski on probation for 3 years. He ordered that she write an apology letter to the staff at the high school and to every superintendent in the county because of the damage she had caused to that profession. She must also stay sober and can no longer work anywhere with minors. But Judge Zoldmulder said that if charges of sexual assault by a staff member had stood, so if those charges had stood, that she originally did, Rosnowski would have received a prison sentence. But that he cannot sentence her for a crime that she was not convicted of. She will receive credit for the time served and is eligible for work release while in prison. Now, the judge in this case reminded a female teacher that she would be sentenced to send a message to teachers who would dare do this after her. Now, in actuality, her sentence should have been longer because a male teacher who was charged similarly was charged long before teacher Rosnowski. Now, in a minute, we're going to compare her case with his. Now, let us compare Mrs. Rosnowski's story to the male teacher and see if fairness existed. Mr. Timothy Grimes, a former Green Bay Suring teacher who had sex with a 17-year-old student, has been sentenced to 4 years in prison. Timothy D. Grimes, 24, will then serve another 6 years on extended supervision. Judge Michael T. Judge decided, and yes, the judge name in this case is Judge. His last name is Judge. How ironic, right? Now, although I do not excuse the behavior of either teacher, you can already begin to see a difference in the age and sentencing. The male teacher was 24 years, and his female victim, 17 years of age, or a 7-year difference between the two. The female teacher was 32 years old, and her victim 16 years of age, a 16-year difference. The judge in this case within the same Green Bay area said teachers like Mr. Grimes and the attorneys in the courtroom are expected to comport themselves better than most people. He said, we're held to a higher standard, and when we violate that standard, it can destroy everything you have accomplished in life. Everything, he said. Adding, you are held in great esteem by a small community. Students look up to you, and you are in a position of trust, authority, and knowledge. He says you can't have it and then wave it off when you need to. You can't say, I was just a boyfriend, the judge said. Now, the teacher, Mr. Grimes, who had taught at Suring for 3 semesters, became a friend to the female through the victim's stepfather, with whom he coached and was regularly invited to sleep over on the couch at their house. Investigators into the case revealed that teacher Grimes entered the girl's room between April and May of 2018, fondling her and initiating other sexual contact with the victim. Mr. Grimes, the teacher, was charged July 30th with 6 counts of sexual assault of a student by school staff, each punishable by up to 3 years initial confinement in prison and 3 years extended supervision. Now, he pleaded guilty to 2 counts, with the other 4 counts being dismissed, although they would be read in, meaning the judge considered them when determining the sentence. The victim, or the female victim of his, was not present, but in a letter read by the mother at the hearing, the girl said she had a crush on Mr. Grimes, as did many other girls in her class, she said. She said she trusted him because he was friends with her parents. The female victim's father in the case said, no amount of prison time will be enough. But please don't allow him to get away easy, he said. He stole my daughter's innocence, damaged her, and betrayed us most of all. Now, District Attorney Edward Burke said while there was some back and forth over whether the relationship was at one point consensual, that did not matter. What Mr. Grimes did not only betrayed the parents and the victim, in this case, but betrayed the entire community as a whole, he said. The issue was not the girl's age at the time, or whether her mother supported some level of relationship, but rather his horrible decision to have a sexual contact with her. The issue is his status of having power and control over a victim, Burke said. Now, that's what we're really here about. We have to send a message that we're not going to tolerate this kind of activity out of anybody who's placed in a position of trust, Burke said. And remember, he said this. Not just to Mr. Grimes, but to anybody else who will consider doing this. Now, from me, it is noteworthy of me to say at this point that this judge would judge the male teacher 1 year before the female teacher would stand trial. If there was a message that was to be sent in this case, it sure wasn't received on her after the fact. The male teacher's defense attorney, Jonathan Smith, suggested that Grimes did not deserve a prison term, even though she was at one point a student in his class, because their relationship spawned from a separate relationship Grimes had with her stepfather. Now, he noted Grimes was cooperative and admitted his conduct to investigators. He said in the police report he made the worst decision of his life, the teacher said. But it didn't happen in a vacuum, Smith said. a printout of text between the two, the perpetrator and the victim, totaling 130 pages between Grimes. The girl and her mother showed a relationship was encouraged, Smith said. He read snippets of several texts that he said clearly showed a mother supported them being together, and others from the girl expressing affection for Mr. Grimes. I'm only trying to provide text in this case, Smith said. My client, he said, is guilty. I don't think it's different than some cases when people are using the position to groom or to have access and groom an individual. He said, I think this is a separate scenario than that. Smith asked the court to impose and stay a prison term, grant probation, and allow Grimes to serve any jail term in the county lockup. Grimes had lived with his family in Brown Deer and worked in Cedarburg while free on bond until it was revoked after he pleaded guilty. It seems as in this case, the teacher's lawyer was trying to go for the very same plea deal that will be accorded 1 year later to the female teacher. Now, in an often repetitive statement to the court that ran more than 8 minutes, Teacher Grimes did not mention the girl or her family. Grimes said he has been honest throughout the case. While there has been a vast number of false statements, false accusations, and lies used against me to portray me in a different light than what I truly am. Grimes said he'd been kind of going down a dark road and developing an individualistic attitude because he was away from his family and lifelong friends after moving to that particular county. He said, I was just thinking I could do everything on my own. But I truly realized that that was not the case. And because of that, and my personal weakness, I was allowed to be influenced by negative factors and negative people in my life at the time. And I put my trust in the wrong people. He says, I truly did. Grimes said he reached rock bottom after seeing how he was portrayed and has been very stressed and subject to breakdowns. To address that, he said he's been reading the Bible daily, attending outreach groups, and working on relationships with family and friends for the first time in a long time. He goes on to say, I did take this opportunity to look at flaws in my life, but also identify who and what truly matters in my life and the person I truly want to be, because this experience definitely was a major wake-up call for me, he said. Now, Grimes asked the judge for a chance to prove himself and demonstrate a positive lifestyle. After acknowledging the end of his remarks, the judge in this case paused for a second and then began to speak. He says, well, Mr. Grimes, this case is not only about you, it's also about the victim, he said. The judge noted that Grimes had a college degree, excellent record of work, no criminal history, and the support of several people who stood and gave letters that he was a generous and thoughtful person, and that he took responsibility and could be counted on to help, and had shown strong character. He also pointed to Grimes' exploitation of the invitation to stay at the victim's house. You'd wait till the parents fall asleep, and then you would go get up and go into the bedroom with the girl. That's what the judge said. To me, that sounds like a plan. That just sounds like, all right, I'm going to be over here this evening, watch TV, play games, and then when the coast is clear, here's what I'm going to do, the judge said. What was the motive for continuing to venture into the bedroom? Judge asked. It was to satisfy your own sexual needs. Let's just say it the way it is. That's what you did, and that's what you did it for. The judge goes on to say, crushes on teachers have occurred for hundreds of years and are not unusual, he said, but teachers are trained on how to address them. The judge took into account Grimes' lack of criminal record, acceptance of responsibility and cooperation with the authorities, and admission of sexual relations with the teen from the start of the investigation at the time. Grimes would likely not commit a similar offense, the judge thought. This has to serve as a deterrent to others, he said. This kind of conduct is not appropriate. It's wrong. It's depraved, the judge said. The judge then issued a consecutive term of 2 years in prison and 3 years of extended supervision on the other 2 counts, and he gave the defendant 70 days credit for his term already served. He was ordered not to have any contact with the victim, her residence, or her family, or anyone under the age of 18 outside of his family without permission. Now, he had to also undergo treatment deemed appropriate by the DOC and complete cognitive intervention program, and assessed a $576 court cost, a $500 in DNA surcharges, and $341 restitution. Now, Grimes, a middle school history teacher, resigned effective January 2nd after being placed on administrative leave when he was charged. He began working at Suring at the start of the second semester of 2016 to 2017, and also coached middle school football and track. But the main thing in all of these cases, if you did not pick it up, go back and look at the video again. She was twice the age of the student she molested. He was 7 years older than the student he molested. Neither is really a difference in the fact that they're adult in a supervision role. Both students said they had a crush on the teacher. Neither plays effect when the position is wrong. I understand that. But there is such a disparity in sentencing. And there are no marchers in the street to say men are treated unfairly in this country or any other country. The main problem is not the people in the street. So whether we marched all day and said this needs to stop, people need to be treated equally, it will never change. Because I found out the problem is coming from the top. Whether it's legislators at the state level, the local level, or the national level in your country. And the judgeships. Those are the people imposing draconian rules on males that they should be better than females, while society tells them at the same time they are less than females. So you should be better, and at the same time you're less. We need to have one continuing standard. If it's wrong for one gender, it is the same for the other ones. There's no such thing as equality on the lopsided field. You've always hear about leveling the playing field. Well, brother, this is the time to do it. For Predator 101, this is Charles Rivers. Thank you for watching us. Tune in next week when we bring you another case of the disparity between the two genders. Thank you.